Okay, I'm going to get this show on the road here.
Okay, go girl. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. If everyone who is not speaking will mute, or I can
Okay.
mute everyone if you don't know how. I know everyone here knows how. Hi, Anna. Hi, Margaret Jane. For those of you, most of you have been here before, but our goal with Critical Connections is to enhance and encourage critical writing in ceramics. I want to thank our recent donors. Linda Lighton gave another generous donation so that we can keep this program going. Thank you, Linda. And Anna Kalori Holcomb donated back her honorarium last month. So I appreciate all of that. Thank you so much. And our guest, I think probably within this group, needs no introduction. We all know her website. I sent out the article, the interview that Diane Charnoff sent or did for the Renwick Craft Journal. So appreciate that. But with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Namita.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see some of you for the first time in a long time. Thank you for the invitation. And because I am who I am, and I know that I will blame it on being in the pandemic the last 2 years, I need slides, I need grounding. So I have prepared something to kind of walk you through. And what I'll do is run through that really fast, and then we can have conversations. And I just thought it would be a great way to kind of give you a sense of where the program is now, what kind of things students are working on, and how it is sort of shaping. We're starting year 5 of the program. So I think we're established now. I don't know when established becomes the term. We know we have this big controversy with when someone is emerging or established in the arts. So let's just say, I think maybe we're not emerging at 5 anymore. With that, I think I'll go ahead and just share my screen. All right, can y'all see my PowerPoint? Let's see. Okay, can you see my PowerPoint? Yeah, okay, super. All right, so the MA in Critical Craft Studies, just so y'all know, we dropped the historical out of the term probably about a year or 2 into the program. And it was partly because it felt like really what we were focusing on is a very specific kind of criticality in thinking, writing, asking questions that's connected to history, but wasn't really about history itself in the way that it's typically done in academia. And so we bring history in, but it's part of a lot of other ways of thinking and working. So it felt like critical craft studies encompassed kind of that way of getting people to think a little differently. This is how everybody feels when they come into the program about craft. It's like, craft, it's so exciting. And to a person, everybody is just so excited to be in a space where they can have the nerdy conversations that they can have with a group that's thinking about things that nobody else seems to understand around them. The thing is that for the past 2 years, we have been meeting like we're meeting right now. This is how we meet. We meet online, we meet in our separate spaces. I have a class of students who have gone through the entire program and never had a residency in person. But they have managed to find other ways to stay connected. And all of us have found wonderful ways to meet in different ways in this last year, now that it's safer with everybody getting vaccinated. And so it's really helpful. Even these just little bits of person-to-person contact have made such a huge difference for everybody to feel connected. The students run their own group on Discord. And so they are on it all day, every day. Faculty and I are not on that. And so I have no idea what they talk about over there, but I know that that's a place where a lot of work kind of conversations about their research, as well as funny jokes and TikToks are being shared with one another. We try really hard to figure out ways to take what has been in person with eating meals together. I don't know about you all, but I think meal eating is probably sitting down and having a meal with people is probably the thing I miss one of the most in the past few years. And we've tried some experiments to do some different sort of recipe exchanges and eating online. Some of them worked more than others, but it's very much our way of trying to bring the tending that happens in craft through all kinds of aspects of the field to bring it into our online environment. So for all of us, I think this is what we understand research to be. It's solitary, it's group, it's looking at photographs, it's looking in museums, it's looking in archives, it's paying attention to objects. And I would say that yes, all of this is part of where research is coming from, but there's more. And there's more that wasn't part of the kind of art historical training that I had, and doesn't necessarily bring in the kind of things that I think our craftspeople or artists who are working through craft have had in their research background. And so we are actually in this program, what's so fascinating, y'all, is that every one of our students comes from a making background. So there are people who are internationally known for their work already, like Maddie Lambert, and I would say Amy Meisner is starting to get there too. And there are people like Kat Gordon who knits for herself, but everybody's doing something with their hands. But they haven't been taught necessarily what research is and how to do it. And it's a skill, just like anything else. You have to learn how to do it. And that's really where a lot of our focus is, on bringing in those tools. And I'm finding that for our program, because everybody is coming from making in this way, in many ways, what we're really doing is giving artists a chance to have voice and to be able to support themselves in what they're saying and support themselves in a constellation of other voices. So it's very different. Like, it's different than saying, okay, I'm going to do research and I'm going to pull this from here and this from here. I'm going to bring it into myself and then I'm going to put it out in whatever I make. This is about, I'm going to do that and I'm going to put it out into the world from whatever I make, but I'm going to connect to this person who is connected to what I'm thinking this way, this person who's connected this way, this person who's connected this way. And this is a real shift from art practice to working like a historian or a critical thinker. And that's really what we are working on in this program with everybody. So that means that research happens in lots of other ways. We go to junk shops. We look at books that have been donated by faculty members. We visit with artists in their studios. The students have done this online during the last 2 years. And we also pay attention to TV. I don't know if any of y'all has anyone here, and I'm just curious, seen the show We Are the Champions? Oh my God, you have to watch this show. It's hilarious. And the first episode that I watched was about cheese rolling. And it's all about tradition, how tradition is formed, what tradition is, why people continue with traditions. And so it became this hilarious way for us to watch the show together as a Netflix watch party and talk about what tradition is in craft and how it gets structured and how their role and responsibilities are in terms of when you are making knowledge, when you are a researcher who is then communicating and you're putting knowledge out there, that you have responsibilities to understand both these keywords and terms that are circulating in craft, but also then what your responsibility and culpability is and how you engage the ideas too. But all through cheese rolling, which seriously, you have to watch this show. It's hilarious. So in our program, we actually are working through an idea that I've been working on for a while. I think I first wrote about it in a catalog essay for the Contemporary Art Museum in Houston for their Hand Plus Made catalog. And it's the idea of a craftscape, and it's drawing heavily on Arjuna Padarai, the anthropologist, on his ideas about scapes. And I can talk about that more later if anybody wants more info, if that's new to you. It's about understanding, we have an 1,100 acre campus at Warren Wilson. we have a dean of land. We are completely immersed in everything from the forest and the land itself, how to read the landscape and understand how it looks different. Time is different when you read a forest. As a forester, they're looking at what's happening now. They can see the impact from 100 years ago, and they're looking 100 years into the future. This blew my mind the first time I talked about this with our Dean of Land, because it's a really different way of thinking about history and understanding our relationship to the so-called natural world versus the human-made world. And how do we break that down is something that we spend a lot of time working on. We look at lots of different archives. We look at making, we visit places like Oconaluftee Village, which clearly we haven't been able to do in the last 2 years. So we've come up with other ways to bring indigeneity and people of the global majority into the program in other ways as a foundational core of what we're trying to teach and present. The people standing in front of the brick wall, I think, is the one that I wanted to point out too, is we also work to teach our students that craft history is everywhere. Craft is everywhere in different forms. And what they're doing is they're touching the bricks that are on the Masonic building downtown in Asheville. There are fingerprints there, and many of the people who made these bricks were African-American makers who are unrecognized, which pulls that whole Minge concept of authorship and the unknown craftsperson into a whole different perspective when you think about work that's been done by hands in right here on where our feet touch the ground that we don't recognize. So those are the kinds of ways we're extending and doing a yes, and yes, you're going to work in the ways that we've been taught as art historians to work, but you're also going to do work in other areas too. We talk a lot about how knowledge construction happens right from the very beginning in terms of what you're reading and how you're reading it. And our book stacks are kind of the most popular thing we post on Instagram. And if you're interested, we've started now doing a quarterly newsletter that is just readings, and it's just weekly readings that our students are getting. But you can see here from a page from one of my texts, I mean, reading is about taking things apart, understanding the construction of the ideas, the construction of the language, where the sources are coming from. And these are the kinds of things we're working on, not just in the written form, but we're also taking it to oral histories and interviews, because the conversations are just as important in our program as the written word. That's because we're trying really hard to use a decolonial lens. And that means that you have to consider all different kinds of knowledge building and knowledge bearing. Growing up, I'm sure you all have had this too, there's this idea that, in order to be appropriately educated, you have to spend some time in Europe. And I would actually argue that in order to be appropriately educated, you should be spending time not just in Europe, but at the same amount of time in Asia and Africa and other places. And students need to understand the global sphere of craft, not just the American studio craft movement. So we work really hard to push in that way. And it starts with the kinds of questions that people ask. And one of the exercises that Lisa Jarrett has done with our students every year, and it changes with every single class how this comes out, but is really thinking about questions as a medium. What questions you ask, how you ask them, who you include and who you don't include is all part of decolonizing and anti-racist work and anti-oppression work right from the beginning. It starts right there, and that's what we're trying to work on with our students. And it's all about learning to make space, really to make space for other kinds of conversations. So our faculty come from all different kinds of disciplines and backgrounds, and you can see a few of them here, and you can find out more about them on our website, but you can see that it's a range of people who are doing very academic work, curatorial work, Tiffany Momans, Black Craftspeople Digital Archive, and so on. And we also bring in lots of workshop instructors, artists like Melissa Potter. And we did an amazing drag workshop in order to understand the performative aspects of drag as connected to craft. it was all online in January last year, and it was amazing with Kareem Kubchandani, who teaches performance studies at Tufts University. And then this semester, we brought in Glenn Adamson, Faith Levine, and Kathy Gray from who's the host at Blown Away. And we did really different workshops with each of them for different reasons. And we can talk more about that when we have our conversation, if you want to hear more about why each person was brought in and how they worked with everyone. Ben Laniel and I love to do projects where we get students to map where they are and to think about where their feet are hitting the ground and what kind of craft narratives are happening right there. And this is this amazing zine that one of the students did this semester. They did a presentation, and then they were looking at this disconnect between this historical facade in their Brooklyn neighborhood and the interiors. So the interiors are kind of like churn and burn, kind of modern, very modern kind of environments. And then the exterior are all very historically oriented. And so in doing the zine, she did it where the first page was all the exterior. And then when you flipped it inside out, you got the inside where you see the kitchen, the Home Depot-ish looking kitchen in the lower right corner. And then another student did another zine. And the reason we were doing so much zine work is the students this year have decided that their publication is going to be in the form of a zine. And so Faith Levine came in and did a workshop with them. And Kat Gordon here found this quote in looking at knitting history of this propaganda poster about remember Pearl Harbor, Pearl harder. And it was a way that they were encouraging women to knit for the soldiers who were fighting in World War II. And what she did in this, you'll see this progression where at the end, the woman is like this at the end because she's just completely like overdone and overwrought. And it's because it's Pearl harder, Pearl harder, Pearl harder, keep going, do more, do more, do more, do more. And then, you know, as Kat says, it's kind of a horror story with multiple levels. The question we ask our students to think about is which craft do you want to talk about? And this is the way that I can sidestep the art versus craft versus design debate, which craft is never going to win because it's structured in a hierarchy. And so this is a way to say, hey, you know what? There are other ways to think about craft as a broader subject, a longer subject. And so some of the projects the students have done have really done this. Mike Hatch did an exhibition where he started with the audio recordings of interviews with craftspeople from Appalachian Mountains that are in the archives of the Southern Highland Craft Guild. And using those as the beginning, he created this exhibition around that really highlighted how constructed the history of the Appalachian craft movement is and the craft revival. And using the language and voices on their own, you start to hear the disconnect in there. And so it was a really creative way of flipping it inside out. Sarah Kelly, who just completed her year as the Wingate Fellow at Ceramic Research Center and has an exhibition up right now, she curated an exhibition around ceramics for the Asheville Art Museum and was also a Wingate Curatorial Fellow there as well during her time in our program. And then Maru Lopez is helping all of us rethink the idea of where Puerto Rico fits in our own United States colonial history. And she's looking at a lot of artists right now who are looking at older craft techniques, digging your own clay, certain kinds of working with sisal and things like that. And they are pulling crafts in a different way than crafts has been officially designated. It's a lot like the Native American Arts Board, where certain things are considered craft, and Puerto Rico has a similar kind of document from the 50s. And those crafts are very specific and different from what Maru is seeing happening. And some of you may know the Whitney is doing a big show on Puerto Rican craft. So we were kind of excited to hear about that and hear how timely Maru's work is. Other students worked on questions about the representation of Black women in craft history and the way in which domestic crafts have been written out in multiple ways. And this is the work that Melanie Goodman has been doing. And then Amy Meisner got a fellowship to do this journal Chattermarks for the Anchorage Art Museum. And she focused on the question of craft as repair, but looked at the circumpolar north. So it's very much about a specific region. And that took her all the way to Norway and in multiple places. And you can find this online too. And then Dara Bowden has written about kites, and her project about kites as craft got featured in some materials recently about online about the centennial of Olmsted in Boston. So the students are getting their work out there. Kate Hawes is looking at greenwood spoon carvers, and specifically at the way in which carvers exchange objects with each other. So it's a different kind of approach to collecting. It's not collecting in the way we think of it with museums, but it's collecting and gifting and exchange for different reasons. And Kate is a woodworker and teaches and does things in Brooklyn. And then a couple of other projects. Lauren Guthrie is looking at natural dyeing. Sam Rastatter looked at three different kinds of materials, including elk teeth that have defined Wyoming as part of the American West as a historic kind of understanding it historically. And then Matt Haw teaches blacksmithing at Warren Wilson College. And Sarah Kelly's show is up. Our students are exhibiting their artwork all over the place. They're getting into collections. So it's both research and artwork that's going on simultaneously. And Mike Hatch just got a fellowship for a grant rather from the Center for Craft, and is working on an article with Dr. Moman on Black women glass blowers in North Carolina. Maddie Lambert is writing like crazy. I can't even keep up with them right now. These are just 4 of the, like, I don't know, maybe a dozen things that Maddie has been writing in the recent months. So they're getting the work out. And then just to share with you, like, the way that the students get practice. So professional practice in our program is really about thinking about the fact that most of our students are not going on for PhDs. So what do they need to know how to do? Well, they need to know how to write a grant. They need to know how to write publications, how to produce publications, because that's the kind of thing they might do if they work for a museum or an arts organization. So this is the student publication that was produced last year. They made postcards because they wanted to touch on exchange between people. And the first year students produced Mapping Craft, which Diane has a copy on her desk right now. And this one was a little bit more text oriented, but it was also including this idea of, you know, where do our feet hit the ground? What kinds of experiences sort of map your understanding of research? And then through the program, we've also done some other things like the Rolodex exhibition, which I curated for Center for Craft, that is an archive that students are now using to document Asian American craftspeople, or people in craft. I shouldn't say just craftspeople, but Asian Americans who are connected to craft. And mostly what we're trying to do is to get everybody to ask the question, what work can we do together that we could not do alone? So this is about understanding that we are a program where students, the average age of our students is 39. So they're coming in with a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise in areas that the faculty may not have. So we take much more of a Paulo Freire, Bell Hooks kind of approach, as much as we can, of reciprocity and exchange. So instead of pedagogy, it's really more andragogy, which is teaching adults and learning side by side in a different sort of way. And that is something that came out a lot last summer in our collaboration with Center for Craft on a conference called Craftways Tending to Craft, which really put a lot of the ideas of how we meet, how we exchange ideas, how we work together to ask questions interview collaboratively with the center and all of the amazing folks who shared their research and practices during that conference. And that is what we're doing. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Very good. Thank you so much, Namita. Wonderful.
Sure.
I want to open it up. You'll see that this is a really shy group. And so I'd like to open it up for discussion, questions. And Tony Hamilton just checked in, and she is one of the wonderful craftspeople in Puerto Rico. So good to see you, Tony.
Hello, Elaine.
Hello.
I just got the end. I just came back from the doctor, so I was not really in it till the end. I am sorry because I like what she's saying.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Well, I don't know if you saw, but we have a student who is from Puerto Rico who is living in San Diego, and she's been back and forth twice to do field work for her project. But she is writing about craft that is a shift. She noticed a distinct shift in the way that contemporary artists are engaging craft in Puerto Rico, and that it's connected into the whole diaspora too. So she's looking at artists who are working with textiles and sisal rugs and ceramics in really different sorts of ways, and trying to really understand and articulate what's happening in the sense of being from an island culture with so many mixtures of cultures, and what that means in terms of the colonial conditions of Puerto Rico being controlled by the United States. And so it's a really complicated paper, but it has these beautiful passages where she's playing with a lot of literature. So you get these really evocative, beautiful passages where she's describing what she's seeing in the studio. So she's really playing with different forms of writing. So
It would be very interesting to meet her.
Excellent.
Because we just had a whole meeting with surf, which now we have a Puerto Rican director in surf. And so after all the tragedies of the pandemic and Maria and everything, we finally are getting to organize most craftspeople, most. It's a difficult island, but it would be very nice to meet her.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm going to put my email in the chat. So please, if you wouldn't mind sending me a note, I'd be happy to connect you.
I will do that, Namita. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Diane Charnoff has her hand raised.
And I guess two quick things. One is a major debt of gratitude to you, Namita. When I heard you at Haystack, Shared Ground, followed you for years, Critical Craft Forum, what you do is simply amazing. And you energize people that you probably have never met all over this world, really. And it's wonderful what you do for craft and what your students do. My specific questions are regarding applications. With the change in terms of how much it costs, do you need recommendations anymore for equity, inclusion, how your program has perhaps changed in the 5 years or been a past leader? And the other is, I really like how you spoke of the side-by-side of the, mentors, that the students with the average age of 39, even if they weren't, as makers, the barriers dropping of who's teaching and who's learning. And if there are any specific ways, here we are, a group that could be stereotyped by some of a certain age or demographic, yet we are all passionate about craft, literally getting the word out. We're curators and writers who care. What could we do with your group that might be part of fitting into, this side-by-side learning and growing together?
Oh, these are great questions. Thank you. And thank you for the really generous compliment, Diane. I'm very touched by that. Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's felt very isolating, particularly recently. So it's nice to hear that connectivity is really appreciated. Okay, applications. So one of the things we started doing right away is I kind of felt like I wanted applicants to get a chance to write something fresh and new, and to dig into something that maybe they hadn't looked at before, and it gives us, when we review the writing, it gives us a chance to really see how they're thinking, and to recognize something that doesn't necessarily show up in a record, in a recommendation, or in a transcript, or in, you know, if you're 38 or 39, or if you're 54 and you're applying to the program, your academic writing is a long time ago, and you're not necessarily going to want to, you know, it may not represent who you are and how you think. So we have 2 objects that are selected with each application, and we ask for students to analyze those. And I'm very clear in our info sessions that this is not, you know, this is not the place to spend the time saying, you know, Joyce Scott is so-and-so, and here's her background. Get into the question. What do you want to tell me that is, you know, rattling around in your head? What are you chewing on with that? And I keep it at 500 words, which is the same length as most exhibition reviews are for publications. And I tell students when we do our info sessions that there's a deliberate thing. It's amazing how much you can actually say in 500 words, but you have to write thousands of words to get to the good 500. So, you know, and that's something we do. And I think what that has allowed me to see, and me and my colleagues who do the reviews with us, we just finished our last our reviews for next year's the students who will be accepted for the next year's class. It really gives us a chance to see how people think. As I said, it opens it up. It gives a chance to play. They might bring in knowledge that we didn't have. They might bring in different understanding, and you can see it in there in a different sort of way. We do require recommendations, but we also make it clear to people that your recommendations don't have to be a professor you studied with. Your recommendations should be from someone who knows who you are as a thinker, and someone who understands how well you will succeed in a self-driven program. So it's really about understanding that you're going to have to do a lot of work on your own. You got to have that motivation to get the stuff written during the semester, or you're just not gonna succeed in a low residency program. So there's that. Are these addressing some of the questions you were thinking about? Cool.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rhonda.
Sure. And then as far as connecting with the students, you know, it's kind of hard. I struggle sometimes, y'all, because having been a curator for 10 years, like, I would love to bring people in. I mean, Janet, you came and spoke. Is Janet still here? Yeah, there she is. Janet came and spoke, you know, at our and did stuff with me at the museum. And, you know, it's so easy when you're in a museum to bring people in and say, hey, come talk. Because we're low residency, it's not a format that lends itself so well to that. So the best way to get engaged, I think, is kind of an of the moment sort of thing, of connect with us on social media. Our Instagram is probably the best place. And then we also have newsletters and things that go out. And y'all have my email. If you didn't have my email before, drop me a note and say, hey, did you read this? Have you seen this? Did you see this exhibition? Want to pass this on to your students? And when people send me things like that, we do an internal weekly newsletter that goes out, and they'll see your name and they'll see you and they'll know to look you up. They understand that if it's in that weekly newsletter, it's somebody who said, I think you need to know this. And so they do research it. They do go in there. And so that's sharing resources is one way. that I can think of that I would love to connect with y'all. You got a new book coming out, you got a new exhibition, whatever it is, send me a note and I send that on to the students.
Great.
That's wonderful. And I will get in touch with you directly about your students writing for the JRA Craft Quarterly. And we are looking to raise funds because I also understand we don't want to exploit the people in your program. And although we might not always pay all the writers, I'm very adamant that, you know, students in these programs need to be remunerated for their time. So, you know, I'll follow up with you on that. Thank you.
Great.
Awesome.
Janet Koplos had her hand up as well. Janet?
Okay, there. Well, I have to say that, you know, I haven't looked into your program closely, so that's my own fault. But thinking about it, I was wondering, you know, why would there be a critical program like this when the venues for critical writing are disappearing? You know, where are these people going to write? Well, as you describe them now, it seems as if they're doing this for a deeper understanding of their own work rather than so much focusing on, you know, on getting on analyzing everybody else. They do it for what they can benefit from themselves. Would that be correct? So I'm wondering if this kind of deep research can it result in writing, say, for the Journal of Modern Craft, which is very academic writing, a whole different thing than what I think of is critical writing. Or where do you fall in there?
A great question, Janet. I think some of them are definitely doing this to expand and understand and frame their own work. Amy Meisner, for sure. Matt Lambert, for sure. The two of them are definitely doing that. But, you know, if you take something like Mike Hatch's work, for example, Mike Hatch is a glassblower. He's been a glassblower for decades, and he's the same age as me. He's put two kids through college. He's put himself through a graduate program. He's got a house. He's got a studio. He makes his living by making glass and selling it. His research is connected, but it's something else. He's writing about how craft history is constructed in the Appalachian Mountains, using the archives and sound and recordings and oral histories as a way of reframing that history through that exhibition, for example. And the work that he's doing with Tiffany Moman, that article is connected to the research grant he got from Center for Craft. And that research is about documenting history that's right there. I mean, it's amazing when I talk to Mike and he catches me up on where he is at. You know, there is so much about Black craftswomen in the North Carolina region that is right there that has not been properly documented. And so in that regard, he's completely fitting in with kind of how we think about the criticality of writing and thinking connected to history making. The Journal of Modern Craft, absolutely, you know, there's students who are, you know, going to want to publish there. There are also students who don't want to publish in the Journal of Modern Craft. They want to publish in blogs and use zines and write in more populist publications. So what we're doing is taking on a really expanded idea where critical is not necessarily critical in the sense of being a critic, but criticality in the sense of asking really hard questions, different questions, and framing things in a different sort of way, whatever that context is, you know?
Thinking then, more than.
Exactly. And I'll be frank, you know, the critical and critical craft is deeply, in our program in particular, is deeply connected to the concepts of critical race theory. It's about asking different questions so that you can tell different stories that have not been told in certain contexts. They're told in other contexts. They're told in other contexts. They just don't get into the books that most people are reading, and we're trying to change that. So, yeah. So does that address what you're wondering, Janet?
Yeah. What is your enrollment then? How many students have you put through this in 5 years?
We graduated 9 in the first class, 3 in the second class, We have 7 slated to graduate this year and 6 for next year.
Oh, a good graduate program.
It's a new program. It's a pandemic, you know.
So
Um,
how
yeah.
long is the program and how many do you take, Namita?
We will not take more than 12 enrollees. We will limit it at that, and that's because it's a very personal program in the sense that there's so much interaction and so much feedback that the faculty couldn't manage it. It's a very personalized program. Yeah, so that's kind of the top. Down the road, that's about where we'll max it out.
Robert?
Yeah. Hi, Namita. Good to see you again.
You
yeah.
too.
Yeah. It's interesting to me thinking about it. It's a low residency program, and how did the pandemic affect it?
Well, so the thing that's interesting is because it's low residency from the beginning, we met in person, and then the 3 months of the rest of the semester. So our semester begins with residency and continues through the semester and ends. So let's say we start in mid-July and we end a week before Thanksgiving.
Right.
The 3 months after residency are times where we are meeting online. We do our classes online, we do our conversations online. This is where it allows me to do things like a student can be in Alaska and is working with someone in France. It allows for that kind of personal mentorship and connection and international kind of scope of what we're doing. So in some ways, that aspect of what we were doing, we were already engaged in online interaction. The online residencies have been a shifting thing. We've had to figure out, I think we finally have figured out the sweet spot in how much we can all manage to take in online and not like want to just cry at the end of the residency because we're so exhausted. And it's very different. It's very different to spend 6 hours a day like this than if we were spending 12 hours a day and it involved 3 meals and walking to and fro from someplace, a tour and a visit, and and reading a heavy hard text. It's just different. So I would say that it's the thing that I think is different is that this format is so formal that it requires only one, you to allow only one person to speak at a time. And when we're in a room, we can have conversation flow really, really differently. And that impacts and that kind of reciprocity that I was talking about. So I'm really glad we're probably at this point, it looks like we might be able to do July in person. And I think it's going to change a lot of the ways students disagree or dissent with one another and with faculty, because this situation makes it really hard to say, hey, you know what, I kind of want to talk to you about that because I think I see it differently. Can we have a conversation? So the chat becomes super important, but that dialogue is stymied somewhat by this Zoom format.
Yeah, I think, it's, I'm interested in how we come out of the pandemic and how our understanding of communication changes as a result of it, and so I just think thinking about your program in particular or other low residency programs and how the importance of that in-person aspect of it is either modified or reaffirmed by the lack of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both. I think there are some things that have been really great because of the distributed learning and the way we kind of played with it. Like when we did our drag performances and faculty did them too. And so we were playing with the camera and, the space behind us. And, it gave us a chance to play in a way that I don't think I would do drag for my, in that group in person. It would be a really different thing. But I felt less self-conscious doing it online because I knew we weren't recording it. It was just for fun. And it was about playing with this box, you know, so coming up to the camera and doing different kinds of things. And yeah, it was a really beautiful experience. And Kareem did such lovely work getting us ready for that. And then there was a way in which Melissa Potter's workshop, when she had them do some paper making, you know, everybody's grabbing things from their own home and their own environment. And so there were different kinds of seeds and different kinds of plants that were incorporated in some that gave you a sense of, you know, change the conversation about materials and materiality, because you understood what was available in a different sort of way where people were. So that was a real advantage too.
Yeah. Mhm.
Namita, I'm curious about those whom you've graduated now and what this is a little bit of a two-part thing, but how many of them are looking to publish now, or are they again looking introspectively? That's one question. And when I was at publishing Ceramics, Art and Perception, I went to the writers for my articles and reviews. And I would have welcomed a list of potential writers from you. Just because I would go to an area and, you know, I might always pick on Janet for New York or wherever she was living. You know? So for some fresh blood and for some opportunities, it would be a good thing to get the names out there and contact information for those magazines and publications that are looking for young and upcoming writers.
Definitely. And I think that, I mean, honestly, I wasn't joking when I said that Maddie Lambert is publishing so much that I can't even keep up, because they are. They are really thinking in public through their writing. And so that's pretty exciting. Yeah, several of the students were interested in writing, and the ones who have been interested in writing, I've kind of passed on a little bit here and there, but I definitely think there's opportunities to get more of their names out there for sure. Yeah, I'd love to think about how we could do that and get them out there more. They all write so differently and so beautifully. Like there's one student, Lexi Harvey, whose work I didn't share, but Lexi is looking at the Renaissance fairs and craft at the Ren fairs in a number of different ways. And Lexi has this beautiful way of like zoning in on a detail and then goes in and then takes it out and gives you this context. And it's just so lovely to read Lexi's writing. And they're all really, really different. They're all really different writers. One thing that I've done, one writer, Kate Hawes, who's doing the work on the Greenwood spoon carving. Kate is working with Karen Olson at American Craft Magazine as her mentor this year, as a way of thinking through how do you write in the academic sense for what needs to be for the qualifying paper. And now how can she take that qualifying paper and write it with, you know, an Utne reader, New Yorker type article in mind, to experiment with different kinds of writing with the same material. So that's one way we've been playing around with it. But I'd be happy to send all of the students who are enrolled in the program are on our website. So you can see some of their names there. I'm writing the website again here, wwc.com. But I'd be happy to send a list and information to everyone. And I think they would love to write. Jennifer Hand is definitely going to be writing more. She worked with Glenn Adamson last semester as her mentor, and Jennifer has written a lot of reviews in Glass Quarterly and some of the other Glass publications. And she's in the program specifically to work on her writing, and she would be a great person to pull in for writing for sure.
Right. And Margaret Jane had her hand up, has her hand up. You're muted.
Hi. Sorry, my computer was being a little fluky. Hi, Namita. I emailed you earlier this month. It's good to see your face.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. So I'm interested in your program, and I was wondering, I'm interested in art criticism for like a publication that reaches a lot of people, like, oh, the New Yorker. Not that I'd write for the New Yorker, just something that would fit into a more generalized publication. Do you see your students writing in that kind of format, or do you think it is more discipline specific, like craft?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I think it varies. I think it really varies. There is a lot of discipline specificity in the sense that we tend to have a lot of textile folks and jewelry folks. We've had 2 glass people, 1 or 2 wood people, and 2 ceramics people, but one of them wrote about kites. She's Dara Bowden, who's works at Harvard Ceramics. Yeah, no, it's interesting. It depends on what they are working on. Like for someone like Jen Hand, she is very specific about glass. Like she is documenting glass history and women in glass history. So for her, writing about glass is really where her focus is. But I think that there are others who would be open to trying to write in other places. It's interesting because they're older students, but they haven't necessarily written in this way. So it's about getting through this program to give them the confidence to try on different kinds of writing. What does it feel like? Like some of them said, oh, I don't want to go on for a PhD. They came into the program and they realized, oh, I want to go on for a PhD because I really like writing in this linear academic format where everything is supported this way. Others have realized, oh, I really like short form, so maybe exhibition reviews would be a better way to go. And I like to share and tie it into other aspects of looking and thinking. So it's really varied. It's really varied. And it's a small pool, y'all. I mean, it's not that many graduates yet. So as it continues, there will be more people to get a sense of where that's sitting. But I think every time we've had opportunities come up, there's always somebody depending on the timing. I mean, I think also during the program, doing the program and writing is hard, to write other things. Lauren Guthrie has a journal article coming out. Joanna Weiss, who's a first year now, has submitted an article for publication. It's really challenging for them to hold down full-time jobs, some of them, and work and do the program and write at the same time. So I think we're all gonna see more writing from them as they're out and about, and they kind of it can be the place where they work differently than when they're finishing coursework. Does that address your question?
Yes, I'm hearing you say that it kind of depends on the student's inclinations, but it would prepare a student who is interested in reviews or whatever.
Totally. I mean, right now I have 2 students one who's writing on a really complex idea of absence in craft, and it's very performance oriented, very conceptual. And we realized that she does great with the academic writing. She's really good at that. She gets it. But she wants to write differently. So right now we're looking for examples of critical nonfiction writers who she can work with to figure out, is there a different way she could talk about this that still does the documentation, the footnoting, the historical context, but could help her create a different voice. So that's kind of exciting.
That's great. It sounds like you know your students really well.
Try.
Yeah.
They're all amazing. They really are.
Margaret Jane, I have a question for you.
Oh.
When you mentioned the New Yorker, but there are a lot of general audience publications that are at a different level than the New Yorker. It's a great goal to have. And I think we've had a few writers on here who have talked about their paths. And in one instance, I'm trying to think who it was. She said that she started writing for her local newspaper and then was spotted. And from what Diane Charnoff says here, you're a good writer. And so if you can get it in at a lower level and get noticed, I think that would be something to target.
Sure.
And I would also add, you know, Rod Hartanian of Hyperallergic came to this group, actually praised Namita, and also said he was curious, he would be happy to work with students who were emerging as writers if they had interesting ideas. And what I know of Mary Jane, because it was Annie Evelyn, the furniture designer from Penland, who recommended that I connect with Mary Jane as just like a stellar person and student.
Yeah.
Oh, Margaret Jane.
Margaret.
I'm sorry, Mary Jane, pardon me. You know, reaching out to the hyperallergic and whether it's their internship or Brooklyn Rail, just because, you know, and I've seen one of your grads, Melanie Goodman, Namita, who works at the Center for Craft. And even though she may not be there as a writer, the good energy and critical thinking your program develops shows up in her brainstorming with the board. So just though your numbers may be small, I think the people who go out into the world from it have a big impact.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that speaks to, well, two things. One, I've actually been thinking about starting a Medium blog just because I'm like, I just want to write. So, you know, Margaret Jane, just write. You know, Alexander Chee, I don't know if you know his writing, but Alexander Chee had a blog for years. He wrote a novel, got published, and then for more than a decade, he didn't publish again, but he's been teaching and stuff. His blog was what gave him the place to work out ideas and things. And it really got him a lot of notice and attention for how he was writing and playing with different formats of writing in there too. And so I feel like sometimes we are so specific and we think we have to have the place to put something or someone has to invite us to do something. And what I really like right now is that there's actually places you don't have to give all of it away, but you can give enough to tease and get people to understand what you're doing. And Medium is super easy. Like you just start. And I don't know why I know why I haven't, because I have no time, but but I mean, you can just start and find two people. All you need is like two other people who you go to and you trust, who you're like, that's the person who's going to tell me that I'm using passive voice or I'm not being clear and I've missed what I'm trying to say. And you just have to have two people who you trust. For me, it's Ben Linnell and my sister. And they are the two that I go to with everything that's you know, goes out. And they are the ones who I know are going to come back to me and say, you know, this is good, but you missed this. And I know you want to talk about that or things like that. And just start, just start, get it out there. But our students are working, and I've loved hearing about Melanie, because I think Melanie's a great example where I don't know that Melanie will end up writing. I don't know if Melanie has a desire at this point to go back to write her paper up in a more academic journal sort of way. But everything she did and everything she's doing is definitely connected to that. So the program is about really trying to impact the field in all those different sorts of ways. I mean, a lot of our students are going to work in, you know, one of our students was working in Eastwork Factory for a while. And one of our students right now is, she just changed jobs. She was the director of an art center in Wyoming. And there's lots of ways to be in the field that are out there that that I think are pretty cool. Oh my God, Elaine, this is the coolest. It looks like you're walking through the grass.
I know, I just disappeared into the. My husband got on the phone out in the other room, so I had to close the door. It is kind of eerie, isn't it? You know, I did some research on Dale Chihuly's effect on the glass field years ago. And Dale Chihuly's publications are primarily those that are for general audience. So, and primarily self-promoting. So he put the glass field out in front of the patrons by getting articles for Gold Coast Magazine, in-flight magazines, etc. So it can, something like that, where it is a general audience, can not only get your name out there, but also affect the field that you're writing about. You know, he had, and then Bill Morris copied his marketing strategy, and they put the glass field on the map. So there are a lot of different ways to go about this. But also, I'd like to say that there are people here who have said that they will review writing for people. So if you have something you want to have looked at, you could send it to me, and I can find someone within the group who might be willing to give you some feedback.
Elaine, are you speaking to me right now?
Am I listening to music?
Oh, were you speaking to me
Yeah.
about reviewing?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I thought you said, was I listening to music? No. Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking of, I don't know the range of your work, I'm sorry, but I think that in our area in Carolina, there are at least 6 publications that regularly publish articles about craft people and or practices primarily related to the tourist and travel industry. And so in that general audience publication, I think of things like Laurel of Asheville or Carolina and so on, that just publish regularly good articles. When we have a studio tour that we coordinate, and we have people who are very good at getting articles published about people, and it's largely in those conjunctions. But it's in that way, it might be a way also. So that may be a broader national opportunity that I think of.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And it may be, those of you who know of publications such as Robert is talking about, send me those and I can circulate them to the group. Mm-hmm. So that, because I think it would be, ceramics and maybe material specific magazines in general are a bit myopic, and our audience is already a set group. We would benefit, I think, from getting more general writing to the general public. So if you know of those magazines, just send those to me and I'll circulate them to the group. We can probably put together a really nice list. I think we're out of time here. I hate to say it. It's been a great discussion. Thank you so much, Namita. And this will be put on YouTube. Along with Anna's last month. I still have that to put up, and I apologize for not having it up yet, but it'll get there, I promise. Any final words for us? And next month, I'm still, thank you, Andrea, just one second. I'm still looking at next month. I haven't set a speaker, but our third Thursday is the week of NCECA. So we will not meet that week, but if I can set something up for the following week, we'll go with that. I'll be at NCECA that week, and I know we won't have our audience. So, Antra, you had something to say?
Oh, just wanted to say thank you, Elaine, for this platform, and thank you so much, Namita, for this talk. Yeah. I feel like I've just been 5 years in the US, and I'm just grasping my ground, like, all the things that this country has to offer. So I really appreciate all that has been in the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for coming, Andre. You're a good, steady attender.
Andre, I would love to get your email also. If mine is in the chat, so send me a note. And I'm going to be really specific. I don't know if anybody else here identifies as someone of the global majority, but I'm usually the only one in a room. So it's nice to see you here. And I'd love to make sure that you're in that Rolodex database too. It's still open. You can still join and add your information in there. So I'd love to have you in there so that we can get you into the cycle for research and stuff too.
Yeah, I'm so sorry that I thought that I would mention that I'm already in there.
Yes.
And thanks for doing that exhibition as well. So I appreciate that as well.
Excellent.
Great. Well,
Excellent.
thank you everyone for coming, and I'll be in touch about our next get together.
Thanks for the invitation, y'all.
Yes, thank you, Namita.
Bye.
Bye-bye.